CBSE Biology Class 10 Chapter 9 Heredity and Evolution Part 1b. Let us learn the biology chapters through questions and answers, which most of the students prefer. Note that PG here is for page, PR for paragraph in your textbook. What was very typical about F1 progeny in Mendel's experiment? In the first place, there were no halfway characteristics in this first generation or F1 progeny. That means there was no medium height plants. All plants were tall. This meant that only one of the parental traits was seen, not any mixture of the two. What was very typical about F2 progeny in Mendel's experiment? In the second generation or F2 progeny of the F1, tall plants were not all tall. Instead, 1/4 of them are short. This indicates that both the tallness and shortness traits were inherited in the F1 plants, but only the tallness trait was expressed in F1 plants. What was proved through F1 and F2 generation plants of Mendel's monohybrid experiment? The result of his experiments indicated that both the tallness and shortness traits were inherited in the F1 plants, but only the tallness trait was expressed. Thus, two copies of the trait are inherited in each sexually reproducing organism. These two may be identical or may be different. Depending on the parentage ratio, a pattern of inheritance was worked out. Why capital form of the T was considered as dominant? In this explanation, both capital T and capital T small t are tall plants, while only small t is a short plant. In other words, a single copy of capital T is enough to make the plant tall, while both copies have to be small t for the plant to be a short plant. Thus, traits like capital T are called dominant traits, while those that behave like small t are called recessive traits. How dihybrid experiment was different? When pea plants showing two different characteristics, for example, shape of seed, round or wrinkled, and another characteristic, color of seed, yellow or green, rather than just one, are bred with each other, then it was called dihybrid. What do the progeny of a tall plant, capital T, with round seeds, capital R, and a short plant, small t, with wrinkled seeds, small r, look like? They are all tall, capital T small t, and have round, capital R seeds. Tallness capital T and round, capital R seeds are thus called dominant traits. What happens when the F1 progeny of the previous dihybrid experiment are used to generate F2 progeny by self-pollination? Some F2 progeny plants are tall with round seeds and some were short with wrinkled seeds. However, there would also be some F2 progeny that showed new mixtures, short plants with round seeds and tall plants with wrinkled seeds. So, Mendel found that the traits were independently inherited. How does the mechanism of heredity work? Cellular DNA is the information source for making proteins in the cell. A section of DNA that provides information for one protein is called the gene for that protein. Here we can see DNA makes the mRNA, and from the mRNA at ribosome, protein is made. How do proteins control hereditary characteristics? Let us take the example of tallness as a characteristic. We know that plants have hormones that can trigger growth. Plant height can thus depend on the amount of a particular plant hormone. The amount of the plant hormone made will be dependent on the efficiency of the process for making it. Consider now an enzyme that is important for this process. If this enzyme works efficiently, a lot of hormone will be made and the plant will be tall. If the gene for that enzyme has an alteration and that makes the enzyme less efficient, the amount of hormone will be less and the plant will be short. End of this part. Dear students, share your doubts and questions to this email. The question answers of this chapter will be continued in next video. CBSE Biology Class Chapter 8, How do organisms reproduce?